This is the all-new Dacia Spring, a sub £15,000 fully electric car and one that you can actually fit 4 people in, unlike the Citroën Ami, making it the cheapest full-sized EV currently for sale across all of Europe. But why is it on this channel? EVs aren't my thing, and I can't really say Dacias are either, to be honest. But I think this is going to be a lot of people's first electric car, and as someone who's never experienced one before, I thought it'd be a good idea to give you my completely unbiased review of it. So, let's find out together if it's a good car or not. I can't believe I'm about to lose my virginity to a Dacia, but here goes nothing. If you haven't got one already, go grab yourself a cuppa, get sat down, and let's get into it. Buying an EV is the automotive equivalent of going out and buying a new washing machine or microwave to me. I'm not particularly excited at the prospect of having to go and do that. When I've got 10 of them lined up in front of me, I can't tell the bloody difference between any of them. And I'm probably just going to buy the cheapest one. That's where this comes in. This is the Dacia Spring, and it is the UK's cheapest EV by some way. I think it's £5,000 cheaper than its closest competitor. And you can actually get 4 people in this. I mean, 4 people my size, but you can get 4 people in here. It's brand new in the UK. There was a previous generation that was available in Europe, but this is an all-new car apart from the roof. They've taken the roof from the last gen, but pretty much everything's been redesigned. All the body, all the interior, and it's actually quite a nice place to sit so far. Everyone seems to overbuy electric cars. They'll go out and buy one that can do 300-400 miles, and when is that necessary? Why are you paying £40,000-50,000 upwards? Because, I mean, electric car prices are stupid at the moment when you don't need all of that performance. Yes, it's nice to have something that can get you from A to B and you don't have to worry about charging it up. But this car's designed for people who are doing 20 to 30 miles a day. So it doesn't need to have the biggest battery, it doesn't need to have the biggest range or the biggest motor. I'll take you through all the tech specs in a second because there are 2 different models that you can buy, and this is the top spec one. So this is 16,995. But for sub £15,000, you do still get a hell of a lot of car for your money. You just maybe don't get this infotainment system that you can't quite see yet. Considering it's only got 65 horsepower, it weighs nothing. So it's really, really nippy. You wouldn't think that the 0 to 60 time is 13.7 seconds, because up to 30, even up to 50, it's quite quick. Right, so I will do a little 0 to 60 test later on because it definitely feels quicker than what Dacia says it'll do on paper. But before that, let's have a proper look at it. Looks quite smart, doesn't it? Yeah, if you're buying one of these new, you'll probably have to walk past a new Twingo or Renault 5 in the dealership, so it might not look as cool as one of those, but as far as Dacia goes, they're going in the right direction, aren't they? To make this as cheap as it is, you might notice the plastic trims around the arches and on both the front and rear bumper. Call me a madman, but I like the look of it. Then again, I like a Passat all-track over a standard one, and I wanted a Suzuki Swift Attitude as my first car, so make of that what you will. The reason for all of these plastic bits, as I'm sure you'll have figured out, isn't just because it's cheaper to leave it unpainted, but because these are designed for towns and cities, they're expecting you to get into the odd scrape or two. So you won't be able to tell if you've dragged it down the wall if it's just made out of plastic. Or, if you're a civilised human and not a Parisian driver who wears their battle scars with pride, you can just pull off the damaged piece of trim and replace it for pennies. The colour list for this Spring isn't half bad. I've seen the majority of them in person now and I like what I see. White comes for free as standard, but if you want to upgrade to brick red like this one, it's a £650 option. There's also Safari Beige, which is a hearing aid kind of colour, Lightning Grey, which is a posh way of saying silver, Khaki, which is a dark greeny blue, and Stonewash Blue, which is a bit paler than the khaki one. But as far as options go for the external bodywork, there are none, apart from the slight differences between the 2 specs. As I mentioned, this is the top spec Extreme model. It's a little bit more expensive, starting at a smidge under 17k, but you get your money's worth. For that extra £2 on top of the base model, the rear parking sensors are upgraded to a reversing camera. How do you do? The back doors have electric windows instead of manual windy up ones. You get electric mirrors, a bi-directional charger so you can power appliances off the car, and faster DC charging so you can keep that battery topped up. The wheels are beefed up to 15 inches rather than the 14-inch ones you get on the Expression model, but there's still only Steelies with wheel trims on. It is the cheapest EV out there for a reason. You get some premium Linglong tyres, and just look at how skinny they are. They're like bottle tops.
The 45 horsepower motor powering you along is upgraded to a 65 horsepower one, but the most noticeable thing for you as the driver sitting behind the wheel every day, aside from the extra power, would be the 10-inch infotainment display and the upgraded bits of trim you get in the cabin. It comes with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay as standard, and I'm not gonna lie, it does make the interior feel so much nicer having a little drop of tech in there with you. I haven't seen the Expression model in person, but looking at pics of it online, it looks a little bit bare, doesn't it? You'll notice that the proportions are maybe a little bit different to anything that you've ever seen before, which is actually a good thing, because Dacia have managed to make this really small car feel quite spacious inside. I parked it up next to a Fiesta and you can see it is considerably taller. Doesn't really make a huge difference to me, that though. I'm only 5'8", so I never really struggle with headroom in anything. But what I did notice was that even with my short legs, my seating position was quite far back relative to the column that separates the front and rear door, creating a bit of a blind spot that I've never really had in any other car. But I could fit in the back without having to adjust the driver's seating position, which is a bonus. Don't get me wrong, it's snug, but I've had far worse seats on cheap flights with a company that I can't say for legal reasons, but it rhymes with Brian's hair. Another quirk that this car has is if you've got feet larger than a deer's hoof, it is quite tight getting in and out the back. I don't really think anyone's going to be buying one of these to use as a taxi though, so you'll probably be able to live with that. Whilst we're in the cabin, I might as well show you what you get. You are spoilt for choice with storage. Above the glove box, there is a huge void to chuck your chicken nuggets in, and the pockets in the doors are really deep. Pretty much everything, barring the rear electric windows and electric mirrors, are controlled from this centre console, meaning there are no switches or anything on the doors, which gives a nice clean look. And I absolutely love the fact that there are physical buttons for features like the climate control and a stalk for you to control your music behind the wheel. Because I am sick of modern car interiors doing everything on a screen. It's dangerous more than anything, you might as well just be scrolling through your phone. Like I mentioned earlier, wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay comes as standard, which should be the norm for any car now, but it still isn't, weirdly. And in this Extreme model, you get these khaki upholstered seats, as well as the copper trim, which I don't really think goes with this colour, but if you opt for the khaki paint, then yeah, it looks pretty good. There's this novelty U-clip design that I've seen every car journalist mention throughout various places in the cab. You can get a smartphone holder, a rear cup holder, a lamp, all sorts of little trinkets to make your life slightly easier, but unfortunately I didn't have any accessories to hand to show you them on this day. The boot is apparently class leading. Everything is measured in litres nowadays, so if 308 litres means anything to you, then that's how much it holds. Essentially, that means it's big for a hatchback and really big for a hatchback of this size. You can select a few different options for your cable storage instead of just leaving them in the boot like this. For £319, the EV pack will get you a double floor in the boot to hide them in there. Or you can utilise the space under the bonnet. Because there's just a load of electric wizardry going on in here rather than your conventional internal combustion engine, there is heaps of space. And for £265, you can have a frunk to leave your cables in. You get the added extras of an armrest and a storage box in the boot with this package, so I know which one I'd be choosing if I had to pick one or the other. Luckily, you don't have to. You can have them both if you like. The rear seats don't have a 50-50 or even a 60-40 split, they just fold down as a oneer, which isn't massively inconvenient, but on the off chance that three of you go to B&Q and you need to get a few pieces of timber home, someone's going to have to get the bus back. Now there is going to be a van version of this Dacia too, by the way, the Spring Cargo, which I haven't seen in person yet. The rear seats are going to be ditched altogether. You'll have a mesh bulkhead and a whopping 1,085 litres of space in the back. Whatever the hell that equates to, it's probably the size of Gary Barlow's son's weekly shop. Anyway, I'd expect to be seeing quite a few of those whizzing around your city centres, delivering everyone's dinner. These obviously aren't as cool as some of the cars in the new Renault EV range, and although Renaults of the past had a bit of a stigma around them regarding build quality, they are still vastly superior to this generation of Dacia. Don't be buying one of these thinking you're getting a German-made machine. You're not. The materials and overall feel when driving the car reminds me a lot of a typical 90s Japanese hatchback, which isn't a bad thing, but you do get quite a bit of road noise reverberating through the cab at higher speeds, and when you close the door, you'll hear a noise that you probably haven't heard since your childhood when your mum had that Rover Metro. Getting on to the actual driving experience then, before we touch on the boring techie numbers, I was pleasantly surprised. I knew this car had a small motor, but it's punchy. I mean, it weighs 983 kilos without a driver, so it's essentially a Lotus, isn't it? And say up to 40-50 mile an hour, it gets you there quicker than most petrol-driven hatchbacks, which, yeah, most people would expect with it being electric, but I need to reiterate, this exact car is worth £17,645 with options. That is the same price and performance as a new Hyundai i10, and you're fully electric. It's mental. Anyway, here's that acceleration test up to 60 from a slight rolling start that I promised you. Now, I'm personally used to Recaro or bucket seats, you know, something that holds you in when you're cornering, and these seats don't do any of that. You'd think with only 65 horsepower, you maybe don't need it, but because you're in such a skinny vehicle and you're sat up a little bit higher, you do get quite a bit of body roll, and some extra support from the bolsters would have been appreciated. So, you know, if you're listening, Mr. Dacia, just take note. But it's a comfy ride. And because those Linglong tyres have such a thick sidewall, this car soaks up potholes, speed bumps and your neighbour's cat just as good as the next car. The steering itself is absolutely spot on for around the town. Super light, and as you'd expect, the turning circle is brilliant. Unfortunately, because it's electric power steering and not hydraulic, it's a little bit vague and you don't really know where your wheels are pointed. When you're going 70 mile an hour, it doesn't automatically stiffen up for you either, so it does make motorway driving a little bit more tiring. Both the Expression and Extreme models come with auto emergency brakes with cyclist and pedestrian detection, traffic sign detection so you have no excuse to get caught speeding ever again, and lane assist. The lane assist isn't too dramatic either. The car will allow you to pull across a white line without putting up too much of a fight if you don't use your indicator. I drove a Kia Exceed recently, and the lane assist on that was like grappling with John Jones if you forgot to signal. Overall though, I am more than happy with how this thing performs on the road, and the more I keep looking back at how much it costs, the more my mind is blown. Even with all of that safety equipment fitted though, it does still only receive a 1-star Euro NCAP rating. But that's because it was given this rating prior to it having all of the crash avoidance technology fitted. Now, you'd probably assume Dacia would have had it retested once they put things in like the auto emergency brakes, but they've obviously been hanging around with the French for far too long now because they just said, meh, it's alright, I can't be asked. Fair enough. Right, the time has come to take you through some of the numbers. Both cars have a 26 kilowatt hour battery. The Expression has a 45 horsepower motor with a 0 to 62 time of 19 seconds. The Extreme has a 65 horsepower motor with a claimed 0 to 62 time of 13.7 seconds, but I actually think it's a little bit quicker. The max range for both of these cars is 140 miles or 225 kilometers. Dacia have said that this vehicle is designed for people doing 23 miles a day. I do about a 10-mile round trip for my commute to work and back, so it'd actually suit me perfectly. Obviously, it's not designed for people who rack up thousands of miles per month. But if you're doing that kind of mileage, an EV probably isn't the best way to go about it anyway. Not at this point in time, at least. The top speed is 78 miles an hour, which is comically slow, but in a country where 70 is the fastest you're legally allowed to drive, it's more than enough, and you'll get a massive 83 foot-pounds of torque to push you along as well. When it comes to charging, it is quite slow. On a 30 kilowatt charger, which is the max it can take, it'll take you 45 minutes to get from 20 to 80%. Again, if you're doing any kind of regular high mileage journeys, it's not going to be the car for you, unless you have the patience of a saint. But I have the feeling most people will use it throughout the day to nip around town, do the shopping, and then plug it in overnight. With your standard 3-pin plug, it'll go from 20 to 100% in 11 hours. And if you have a 7 kilowatt wall box at home, you can do the same 20 to 100% charge in 4 hours, which is a lot more sensible. The fact the charging point is at the front is a little bit annoying though. It's not too bad if you're at a spot like this, but I mean, when you pull up to a normal bay parking space at the service station, you will have to park it forwards. Might just be a personal pet peeve of mine, but reverse parking is just so much easier. I've lost far too many splitters to even chance pulling into a spot forwards nowadays. Anyway, I think that's all of the bases covered. I'll pop all of the options up on the screen now for you to take a look at so you can total up how much it'd cost you to build your desired spec. So pause the video, total it up, and let me know down in the comments how much yours would cost. Even if you spec every single option on this car, it'll still cost you less than 19 grand. Absolutely phenomenal value. I just wish the key folded down because it kept poking through my leg when I was filming this. Just got to give my local Renault Dacia dealership a big thanks for letting me take this out. I'm not clued up on my EV new releases, so I missed all of the press runs, but they were super accommodating, and yeah, I wouldn't be making this video without them lending me one, so tar very much. Subscribe if you're new around here. It's not always EVs, well, it barely ever is. I was fitting an exhaust on a GT3 RS in my last video, so I like to keep you on your toes. But that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave us a like if you did. I've been lookship, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!